one of the things that I think is very interesting, it's the idea of credibility in comics.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a big debate where people on Kickstarter say, hey, look, I'm indie and I'm building my own name up and I don't need the big people to do it. And
Mhm.
first thing also, some people say, look, if I write for Zenescope, or I write for DC, I write for Marvel, all of a sudden I have credibility. And
True.
tabling the economics and raising your rates and all that stuff, or even getting, a funnel into you, I guess maybe slightly getting business into you. Once you say, hey, I used to work for Marvel, I used to work for DC, I did work for Zenescope, you start getting sort of clout. And I think you get a level of respect, especially if you have 50 covers with Zenescope or you have
Yeah.
20 covers with Zenescope. And so, what is that like for you? Because I think it does add some credibility when
It
so
does. It
and
does.
so
Interesting story. This is you ask these great questions. It makes me think of this. When I was getting back into it and I was starting to do stuff for Zenescope, um, people in my hometown. I live in a small little southern town, and they'd ask, well, they'd see my art and, oh man, you draw great. Oh, we love the way you draw. Oh, you're so talented. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Then they'd say, well, what do you do for a living? And I'd say, well, that's what I do for a living. And then they'd just kind of look at me and do the, kind of like they all but patted me on the head and said, good boy, here's a lollipop, going about your way, poor thing. But once I did Alice in Wonderland, they didn't even know who Zenescope was in my little town, but they knew Alice in Wonderland. So all of a sudden it went from I was eating beanie weenies out of a can to a dump. They went to the opposite extreme, thinking like every day a big dump truck pulled up to my house and just meh, meh, and dropped a bunch of cash on. And I'm like, it's hilarious. But in the industry itself, yeah, I mean, it starts to get credibility, and I don't know. I mean, it does, I guess.
because I understand from just my interview point where all of a sudden I'm interviewing people like Paul Levitz, Denny O'Neil, Chuck Dixon,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden other names are like, yo, I want to be on your show. And I asked people before I had those three people on my other show, and I wouldn't get a response. And then the second I start name dropping, you're like, oh man, I want to, be on your show.